Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are checking out something incredibly cool. This is a brand new Hiya Toys release. We've finally got the Exquisite Basic Shimo. This has finally arrived, and honestly, there was definitely some complications when it comes to shipping this one from Calcus. I have ordered this one from Calcus because I was just so excited to get this one in my hands and check it out, and of course add it to my collection. They do state on the website that it takes 14 days for shipping, but I don't know if it was something related to the tariffs or what, but it definitely did not arrive in 14 days. It was more like 21 days, so there was definitely a delay where, and it's been happening to a lot of their orders for some reason where like they're being shipped back or something and then sent again. I don't know exactly what's going on with that, but it did take a bit longer to get here than it was supposed to, but I'm still excited that it's finally here, so definitely hyped to see what this one looks like outside of the box and in person. You can see the box art looks pretty nice. We've got the Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire logo, as well as, of course, Shimo down here, and then a really nice shot of the figure up on the top, Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire. Over here on the side, just a little bit of a preview there of some of those crystal-like spines on the back of Shimo. Same thing on the opposing side, pretty much. And then here on the back, just some random shots of the figure and information here. So definitely been waiting long enough, I think, to get this one in hand and check it out. So let's pop this box open and see what this baby looks like. So here is our Shimo now out of the packaging and standing before me here. And wow, like first impressions, this thing is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. And they've captured everything about Shimo that I can think of, that I know and love. And one thing straight away I was really curious about whether or not they were going to capture on their version was the kind of iridescence that you see on Shimo in the film. And they definitely did. They nailed it. I had seen many people sharing images of theirs over the last few weeks while I waited for mine to arrive. And it's a little hard to really tell through images whether or not it had that. And, people were saying it did, but it's not until I actually had a chance to finally get this here in hand and truly appreciate how good that aspect actually looks. So this thing is really, really cool looking straight out of the box. So bringing it in for a closer look, starting up here at the head sculpt that my camera doesn't want to focus on, you can see the head sculpt looks excellent, and they have done such a good job as far as actually not just sculpting this one out, but painting it. The paint application on this is beyond impressive. You can see, again, we of course have that, white sort of a color that you would see on Shimo. You can see the eyes are also painted really nicely. If we get nice and close, you can see how nicely painted the eyes are. But there's also like some pinkish tones in the face. Looks like there's like a wash that's been applied, and potentially the pink is the wash, or maybe that was the base coat and they started with that. I'm not too sure, but I could definitely see variation of color here in the face of Shimo. You can also see all of these kind of like, crystal-like spikes and stuff starting to pick up here on the side of the face. They are painted out with a mixture of purples and blues. Some are blue, some are purple. That looks really nice as well. We do, of course, have an articulated jaw. Do we have an articulated tongue as well? Oh yes, we absolutely do, which you can see right there. So that's super cool. Once we lead into the inside of the mouth, you can get a look and feel for the detail in there. Looks really nice, definitely impressive. Also some variation of color with different shades of pinks and reds and stuff in there as well. I don't know how wide the mouth goes. I think that's pretty much it. And the tongue's kind of now in the way, so we got to push that down. The shadows are going to overtake the inside of the mouth. I'm just trying to get a nice shot inside the mouth. The feet are now kicking the camera stand, but the detail looks really good in there. Same deal for the tongue. You can see the texturing and everything looks really nice. Paintwork looks really nice for the tongue of Shimo. We can see the teeth are all sculpted, and they do look pretty good. Like there's not really much sloppiness or anything that I can see as far as the teeth goes. And that's definitely exciting because I feel like a lot of the Godzillas from Hiya lately have had kind of sloppiness in the teeth, but you can see the paintwork of the teeth of Shimo is definitely pretty precise for the most part. A little sloppiness over here. You can see a few of the teeth haven't been perfectly painted, but still not half bad. I think it's fairly decent as a whole when it comes to the paintwork of the mouth, at least. But actually, I would say of the entire figure, from what I can see, the paintwork looks really good. As you move down through the neck, you've got all of the bumpy scales and skin texture of Shimo moving along the back. You can also see kind of like you know, bigger, kind of more armored style skin texture and scales as you move down to the underside, and then we almost have like a crocodilian sort of a look as far as the scales and kind of like scoot-like scales moving along the underside of Shimo as well. We do have articulation in the neck. You can see we've got one joint right there and one joint right there. So as far as its neck articulation goes, you can go left and right really nicely for sure. Definitely some very smooth neck articulation left and right. Going up, it seems like that's about as high up as it goes, but I think the biggest problem, I should say, right here is these little crystal-like spines are definitely going to stop it from going up. I feel like if these weren't here, you might be able to capture a little bit more up and down. Well, down isn't the problem. You can see we can go down pretty nicely, but the up is stopped by these spines, sadly. But, I mean, that's the design of Shimo. There's not much you can really do about it. But the articulation is pretty smooth. You can also, of course, swivel, and you can swivel it all the way around if you want. Definitely really well done when it comes to the range of motion and range of movement in the neck. That's really, really nice articulation. As you move back, you can see the skin texture continues to look really good, really quite vibrant. I don't know if my camera is just not liking the bright colors of this, but we're going to keep it a little bit further away. But you can see, again, the skin texture looks absolutely excellent. We can continue to see the pinkish tones there kind of underneath all of the white tones, which just looks so nice and just adds some nice depth to the paint job of this figure. And then, of course, you have all of the spines up here on the back. They're all nicely sculpted, definitely looking very crystal-like. And as you can see, most of them kind of start out with like a purplish tone and then lead out to a bluish tone, but it almost looks like there's some slight variation to the blues. And that area as well has that sort of iridescence where it sort of shines, looking like it's sort of like one color with one shot and then a slightly different shade of color with a different angle. It's really, really cool. As you move down into the front leg of Shimo, you can see again we have like those heavily almost armored type scoots moving along the front and back of the leg with more kind of like standard style scale detail right there. But as you continue to lead down through the leg, it just becomes more and more armored, it looks like, as you move down. It looks really nice, and I think you can really see that iridescence sort of a look right here with the way the light is kind of shining on it. It looks insanely, insanely cool. As you move down, it looks like we have a ton of articulation in this front leg, leading all the way down into the feet where we have articulated toes. So Hiya really outdid themselves when it comes to the articulation of this one. And as you move down again, the foot sculpt looks really good. You've got the nicely sculpted nails. They do have a nice genuine sharp look to them. They as well have like a bluish sort of a tone with some hints of purples included as well. So again, the paintwork is fantastic on this. When it comes to the articulation of the leg, forward and back, exceptionally smooth, and it can definitely keep going if you want it to. You know, can completely swivel around potentially. You also can come out away from the body a little bit. You can see that right there. It doesn't go super far, but it does come out a little bit. You've got another spot right here, which is like a swivel. Doesn't seem like there's much as far as a forward and back motion there, but definitely can swivel. You have the elbow, which of course is a joint up here and down here, which you can see that moving. So you have incredibly smooth articulation in the elbow right there. And of course you can extend the leg back. Can that swivel? Not sure. Kind of feels like maybe a little bit. I don't want to mess with it too much. You've also got another spot right here, which can go forward and back and swivel. Another spot right here, which can go forward and back and also swivel. Man, the articulation on this is super smooth right out of the box. It heavily reminds me of my first experience with an SH Monster Arts figure because the articulation really blew my mind with how smooth it was straight out of the box. And a lot of the time, the Hiya figures end up being a little stiff at first, whereas this one is exceptionally smooth straight out of the box. So they very clearly have improved their articulation on top of everything. And then you obviously can see we have the toes, which can go up and down. So you can articulate every toe individually if you want. Every single toe articulates, which is absolutely awesome as far as this figure goes. I don't know if we can swivel it, but I don't really feel... Oh yeah, you can. You can swivel the toes as well, so you can even turn the toes if you want. Man, that is like next level impressive articulation on this. As you move back into the stomach region, you can see the scale detail and everything continues to look really vibrant, really crisp. You can see the more heavily armored sort of a look to the underside of Shimo as well. And again, the shine on this seems to be almost wreaking havoc with my camera. You do have a nice midsection joint right here, which can go left and right and up and down, which actually is also quite smooth. And then you've got another one right here, which really nicely swivels, and you can snap his spine if you really want to. That one also goes up and down, which you can see right there. So you can get like some upward leaning motion or upward leaning poses. Same deal if you want to kind of go down. So really impressive all around. As you can see leading down, those kind of crystal-like spines start to decrease and become one line of spines moving out. As you lead down, you've got, again, that sort of heavily armored scoot-like look moving down through the thigh. The detail on this is beyond impressive. Like, it is really, really crisp, really vibrant. As you continue to lead down, you'll see the same thing again as far as the scales and everything goes. Pretty close to looking like the same way it did in the front leg, leading down into the feet. And then again, we have very, very nice, very smooth leg articulation forward and back, also out away from the body, which you can see. You have knee articulation right here, which moves really nicely, and that is above and below the knee. You've got one spot right here, and then one spot right here. Sorry, it's a little hard to really grab it to kind of show that to you. But as you can see, it moves very nicely. Does also swivel in both sections. You've also got another spot right here. As you move down into the ankle, can swivel and go forward and back. And then another spot like a ball joint right here that goes above here and then down below, giving you even more, oh, I almost lost it there, but even more articulation. And then, of course, those areas can swivel. And we don't actually have articulated toes on the rear foot, which actually is kind of surprising. I really did expect that, but not a big deal because, again, I feel like you've already achieved every ounce of, posability back here that you could possibly want when it comes to Shimo really smoothly without needing those toes articulating as well. And then we lead out into the tail, and as you can see, there is quite a few joints moving out through the length of the tail. As you lead out, again, the detail looks awesome, just as it has the entire way through. Pretty much the same style, but maybe a little bit more armored as you move out through the length of the tail. And then you have that very unique look to the ending of the tail of Shimo, which again is painted with different variations of blues with a slight hint of some purplish tones out there. And when it comes to the articulation of the tail, that again as well is really, really nice, really smooth. You can definitely get some very nice posability out there for the tail in pretty much any and every direction, just like you've been able to do with the figure the entire way through. And then, considering it is an articulated figure, it's going to look pretty much the same on the opposing side as it did on the initial side. But, wow, to say I am impressed with this one would honestly be an understatement. I don't think I've ever been more impressed with Hiya Toys than I am right now with this Shimo. As far as a size goes, it definitely has some pretty nice size to it. You are looking at about 15 3/4 inches or around 40 centimeters in length. And then for a height, maybe to the top of that spine, about 6 inches or a hair over 15 centimeters. To the top of the head, about 5 1/4 inches or a little over 13 centimeters. But of course, being an articulated figure, you can kind of stand it up on its rear legs and make it taller and stuff if you want. But for a size comparison, of course, we have our traditional review comparison suspects, as we have Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and a Collect A human being next to our Shimo. And as you can see again, it definitely is quite large. I would say the second largest Hiya Toys figure I now have, with only King Ghidorah being larger. But for another comparison, here is the comparison I would imagine most people would want to see, as we have the Hiya Toys Godzilla, the King of the Monsters version technically, but it's pretty much the same thing as the Godzilla, versus Kong Godzilla, so there's not really much of any difference. And I haven't acquired any of the Godzilla X Kong Godzillas yet. I'm waiting for the evolved version to release, at least as far as the articulated versions. I do have the Stylus series version, but that's non-articulated. But you can see, again, the size is definitely quite impressive here for Shimo, but Godzilla looks to be able to hold his own quite nicely next to Shimo. We've also got the 2014 Godzilla here next to Shimo for one more comparison, just to kind of help you if you happen to have that figure. Then when it comes to SH Monster Arts, my only SH Monster Arts Godzilla I have so far, which I am definitely hoping to change at some point, but you can see again roughly what the size is next to Shimo. We've also got a Playmates Godzilla next to Shimo, which you can see again. Shimo's going to win this round every single time, I would think. And then for a fun comparison with another quadrupedal kaiju, we have the Bandai Varan next to Shimo, which is again a bit smaller. We've also got the Bandai Titanosaurus here, giving you a feel for what the size is next to a standard Godzilla figure, or Godzilla type figure, I should say, from Bandai. Then we've also got one of the newer articulated, or more so articulated Bandai figures. Again, another Godzilla next to Shimo. And then one final comparison as we have one of the Playmates Shimo figures here. This is like that standard $10 range figure next to the Hiya Toys version, which you can very clearly see the Hiya Toys version is significantly larger. And I would think it would stay that way unless you brought in like the giant Shimo from Playmates. Of course, that one's going to be a bit larger, but by far the Hiya Toys version is the most impressive Shimo out of any of them that I have purchased so far. So this brand new Hiya Toys Shimo is absolutely out of this world, incredible, and I would say by far one of, if not the single most impressive Hiya Toys figures I have acquired from the start of me collecting these figures. Like, every single figure has continuously impressed me and pretty much blown my mind ever since the first release that I acquired, which was the King of the Monsters Godzilla. But I don't know if any of them have really blown my mind as much as Shimo has here. As far as the quality of the figure, it is of the highest quality I could possibly imagine, with only one tiny little slight bit of sloppiness in the teeth. Past that point, the sculpt on this and paint on this is absolutely excellent. It shows off everything that I know and love about Shimo, even capturing that super cool iridescence type of a look. And again, when it comes to the detail is insanely crisp and insanely impressive through the entire figure, but the paintwork has done such a great job of highlighting all of that detail. Again, they've added really nice depth to the paint job with, you know, different shades of whites and kind of pinkish tones, like darker pinkish tones, really capturing the look and feel of Shimo. And then of course, when you move up into all those spines and everything on the back of the head and in the back of the body, you have the different shades of blues and purples that look extremely cool, and the entire figure is completely covered with that sort of iridescence type of a look that again is exactly what you see on Shimo in the film. On top of that, the articulation on this is crazy impressive and crazy smooth. It has so much articulation, by far, unless you count each and every joint in King Ghidorah's body with the tails and neck, but I would think that this is probably one of, if not the most articulated out of all of the Hiya Toys figures that I have, and the smoothest potentially straight out of the box. The articulation is like SH Monster Arts smooth straight out of the box. It's that impressive, and that again is something that I'm not entirely used to with Hiya. Normally their articulation is a little stiff and you kind of have to work it in, but this one, man, it is flowing like a stream, I guess you could say, straight out of the box, which is definitely great as far as being able to pose it and display it. So without question, this is a must-have if you are a Godzilla fan. So if you are interested, I will include a link in the description to Hiya Toys, which is where I purchased mine. Hopefully they now have the shipping thing kind of like sorted out and dealt with, and it should be pretty smooth. I know they were working on it, so hopefully it'll be shipping nice and smoothly at this point. So make sure you pick this up, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.